On the previous stream, we went through some of the basics of the platform, on how Cloudflare Workers works under the hood, what's the concept of serverless, what's the concept of edge, which is the basis of Cloudflare Workers, the serverless that's on the edge, and then how to build APIs on top of that, how we can do it vanilla by just writing some very simple JavaScript or TypeScript code, or we went a step further and we also implemented a router grid. So today we're taking that router and we're going to implement a bunch of API endpoints so we can create a very basic to-do application. It's not going to be a mind-blowing app, but I think it's going to be well worth it so you can understand the basics of how to build a backend API and how to consume that backend API from the front end.
That's effing sweet.
Today, my goals are this one. We're going to create a get endpoint that will return the to-dos for a single user. Okay, we're going to actually split the to-dos by users. Okay, well, we're going to mock the users with a random ID, but you'll see. We'll also create another endpoint for posting new to-dos. So people will be able to create a new to-do and send it to the server and store it. And then we'll do a basic UI with a form where you will be able to just submit new to-dos and also to list the existing to-dos. Last thing would be editing to-dos. So we will need an additional endpoint for using the put method and updating an existing to-do, and also implementing that in the UI, and then deleting to-dos, an additional endpoint for deleting a to-do, and also a button in the UI so we can trigger that. Okay, let's start. So let me show you for one second how does KB look like in Cloudflare. In Cloudflare, well, this is the worker that we already deployed on the previous stream. If you want to see how it's deployed, it's very simple, but just go ahead and watch the previous stream. It's just running one command with the CLI. Super simple. And inside workers, we have already built in what it's called KB, what I mentioned. KB just, you can create multiple, they call them namespaces. And we already created one called stream to-dos, okay? And inside these stream to-dos, on the previous stream, we just manually added them. You can see how we can use a key and we can use a value for it. In this case, we're gonna identify the keys per user. You'll see that in a second. But imagine that it's some random ID. And in the value, we're gonna just add some JSON, stringify JSON with the data. So it's gonna be an object, something like title. Well, it's gonna be JSON, so something like title, and it's equals to blah blah blah, etc. Okay, this is what we're gonna do, but instead of doing it manually, today we're gonna implement the endpoints so we can do it programmatically instead. So let's start with this. Get to-dos. We already know we have the router. Okay, let me just run this just for a second. Let's say pm dev. This is already set up. And the cool thing of workers, we already saw these in the previous stream too. It's that it does not spin up a local development server, and instead it actually spins up a worker on the edge that it's synced with my local storage, with my local host, sorry. So every time that I'm just testing it in my local host, it's actually making a request to a real V8 isolate in Cloudflare. So we can see how it's actually the production environment looking like. So something you cannot say that it's working in your machine, but it's not working in production. Because actually when you're doing it in your machine, it's like in production, which is, I think it's very cool. So if we visit this, just the route, the homepage, the root of the API, we just have a very simple API endpoint that it's returning text. It's returning the content type with hello Joel as the body. Okay, we can keep that so we can always check it if it's working fine. But the next API endpoint that we want to do, that we want to implement, it's the get to-dos. we previously, just for demonstration purposes, we created this /todos endpoint that just lists everyone's to-dos, and we can keep it like that. But obviously, in a real environment, you don't want to have an endpoint that it's listing every single user's to-dos, right? You don't want to be exposing that data. Instead, you want to create an endpoint that it's just listing the to-dos for a specific user. Okay, so let's just see how we can do that in a very simple way. But we'll just create another get endpoint. Okay, it's gonna start with to-dos, but instead of just keeping it like that, we're gonna add an additional slash /, and we're gonna add this. No, actually, let's say user ID, like this. Okay. One thing that it's great of Hono.js is that it has wildcard routes. It has wildcard routing, meaning that you can do what I just did here. Look how I used these this colony here, and I added a variable, and I'm just saying, okay, we're gonna get a route that it's gonna be /todos /something, and that /something Hono.js, it's going to convert it to a variable called user ID, so we can check for it already. Let me show you. So we add the callback, make this async. That. And by the way, if you see me struggling typing, it's because today I'm in my laptop and I'm not used to the keyboard of my laptop. So I'm sorry if I struggle a little bit. But anyways, so if we did C like this, the C is the context that Hono.js passes. And in this context, we have a bunch of helpers. So what we're going to do is C, go to the request and get a param. And this param, because I'm using TypeScript, Hono.js already knows that I've defined user ID. Okay, so Hono.js knows already that like that. So I think that we have to wait. No, that's fine. Hono.js knows that there's a parameter called user ID. If I change this, look how TypeScript is complaining, because Hono.js, it's smart, it's generating types for me, and it knows that this endpoint is expecting a parameter called user ID, like that. So good. So we got the user ID, and before moving on, I want to show you how we can properly identify the KB entries by user. So what we're going to do, see how we just have a key and a value. Okay, this key has to have two things. We need to be able to identify the user, and we also need to be able to identify the to-do. So we have two IDs going on here. So we're going to do something like this. User ID, let me call it user ID. And we're going to do just underscore and to-do ID. And you're probably asking now, okay, but why we're doing it like that? Like, what the hell am I doing? And this is one of the cool things of Cloudflare Workers. And it's that if we go to the docs and we check the APIs for KB, let me scroll down a little bit. We have a feature called listing by prefix. So essentially, we can take a KB store. We can call the stream to-dos, and we can say, okay, I want to list the to-dos from it, but I only want to list the to-dos that start with a specific prefix, which means that then we can say, okay, give me all the to-dos that start with the current user ID, the one that I'm processing, and just underscore. The underscore could be anything, could be a dot, could be whatever, but just for the sake of, not confusing, it's going to be a underscore. That's it. Okay. And the to-do ID, it's obviously going to be the ID. That's it. Okay. So let's actually implement this. We already got the user ID. Now, what we have to do is fetch all the to-do items from this specific user ID. And on the previous stream, we already saw how we can look into the KB store and list to-dos from it. It's very simple. We just have to do, let me say items again. List items, come on. And we're gonna wait for it. Environment, stream to-dos. And by the way, I'm getting auto completion. I'm just remembering this for everyone, but I'm getting auto completion because I defined it. in my context. So I already told Hono.js that I have a binding that it's called stream to-dos, and it's a KB namespace. So this is very cool because then I have auto-completion for everything. I can say list like this, but if I just do it like that, I'm going to list everything again. I don't want to do that. What I want to do is pass an additional options object that contains this parameter for prefix. And the prefix is going to be the user ID underscore, like that. So we're saying, okay, get me all the KV values that start with this, with the user ID and an underscore. Very simple, but powerful. We can use this to classify any kind of data. Well, not any kind, because relationships can be pretty complex, but some basic relationships. And that's it. Let's return this items like that. Oops, not return the item. Sorry, we have to return a JSON response with the items like that. And the status code is going to be 200, which is the default, so that's fine. That's it. So simple, but so powerful. And let's actually check that. Let's go to here. Let's start by just listing all the to-dos. So if I go to just like to-do /to-dos, let's remember that it's the previous endpoint, the one that we created in the previous stream, that just lists all the to-dos. And in this case, it's this one. So it's just listing everything. It's listing this one, and it's also listing this one, like that. Okay. But we don't want to list everything. We want to list the ones that start with the user ID. So imagine that I had a user ID that it's 134, like that. Now I'm gonna get an empty array, and actually I'm thinking that I don't think that we have to pass this list complete because this is by Cloudflare. Let me say keys. Whoops. Actually, yeah, we can do the same here. Here also will has the keys like that. Okay. So let me do it again. Let me refresh. So now we're getting an empty array. There's nothing there because obviously there is no user ID with the 134. We're not getting anything. But let's create one just manually here. And I say 134 / blah blah blah. This is gonna be my ID. And just whatever, some random values. Like that. Let me move this because I can't see an entry. Okay, KB is in place. Let's refresh that. And now see how I'm actually receiving this. Now I can see this because it starts with my user ID prefix. Cool. More than enough for this. We can use it to list stuff. One thing that I'm seeing is that it's just listing the keys, but it's not listing the values. So I'm assuming that we have to actually fetch each one's value in case that we wanted to see something, because yeah, you can get it, put it, because I don't know if you noticed, but when we are listing the KB records, we're just getting the keys from it, but we're not getting the data. We don't have to return the keys. Okay, we actually we're not returning the keys. We're returning this part, but we want to return the value from it. So what we're gonna do instead, well, not instead, but additionally, is we're gonna take these items and we're gonna map them and get the value from them. So I'm gonna say values or to-dos. Let's call this to-dos. And we're gonna take the items. We're gonna map this items keys, sorry, and we're gonna map this like that. And from each one, we're gonna extract the name. And from this name, we're going to get the actual value from it. So we're gonna say c.environment stream to-dos get and the name of it. Okay. But we have to wait for this because this is asynchronous. Look how I'm getting a promise, an array of promises that return either a string or null. So what we have to resolve every single promise that is going on here. So for now, I'm just gonna say await promise.all like that, which is gonna convert this array to a single promise. So this array of promises to a single promise that resolves with all the values from here. So let's do it again. And now let's return this. Let's return the to-dos. Let me check it again. Cool. So now we're getting the actual value. Let me go back to the to-dos and see how, oops, I'm going to do the same in there. So let me do it. Just copy paste. And we're going to return the to-dos. Remember that this endpoint is just listing every single to-do for showcase purposes. Okay, so now we're getting all the values. Now we're getting everything. Okay, so now we have this. We have a way of getting all the to-dos from a single user. Now let's post those to-dos. Let's create new to-dos, okay? And I'm going to do that before moving on to actually implementing the UI. I think that we can make it. We can do it for today. Let me get rid of this. So that's it. Let's create a post. Let's say app.post. And we'll say to-dos / again, user ID. And that sync C. Okay, so let's there are a couple of things that I want to mention here first before moving on. The first one is, if you're not familiar with building backend APIs or just with basic concepts of okay, trying to come up with the best word, but and I'm just gonna say backend development, but it's server communication. It's the HTTP methods that we use to communicate with the server. Okay, you probably have heard a bunch of times like, okay, get, post, put, delete, stuff like that. But what does it actually mean, right? So essentially, when we're communicating with the server, we're doing it through an HTTP request method, okay? And this is us telling the server, hey, I want to do this action. I want to get some data. I want to update some data. I want to delete some data. I want to create new data, okay? This is when we are communicating with the server. And when we're getting back the response code, oh my God, I just made a mess there. When we're getting back the response code, it's the server telling us what was the result of it. Was it okay? Was it a redirection? Was there an issue with the data that you sent, etc. So essentially, we have this two-way communication. So when we're creating this in the router, we're essentially saying, hey, I'm creating this route, and it's expecting a post method. Okay, it's expecting a request that contains a post method. And a post method, if we check the definition, it means that submits an entity to a specific resource, often causing a change in state or side effects on the server, which is kind of the translation to saying that it's creating something. It's sending some data to create some new record. It's affecting something on the server. In our case, it's creating a new to-do. Okay. If we wanted to update it to-do, it's usually used the put method, which is saying, hey, I'm sending some data to mutate, to update something that already exists. The delete one, it's pretty obvious. And then the rest of them, I'm not going to go through them because I'm just going to confuse you with options, etc. Okay, let's finish this. Post. We first need to get the data from it. Okay, we have to retrieve the data that's coming to the endpoint through the request. And we're gonna say, let me just say this for now, input. We're gonna say c.json, and no, not c.json, sorry, I think it's body, but I will have to check it because I'm not sure. Give me 1 second. It's in the request. Oh, like that, yeah. So we can actually do it like this, or we can also do it like this. Okay, and let me explain the difference between these two. So when somebody's it's sending data to our API endpoint, this data can come in many different formats. But the two most known, the most typical formats that it usually accepts is either in JSON. So we're sending a string that it's a JSON blob that contains the data, or it comes in form data, in multi-part form data, which is the content type that it's sent when you submit a form, when you submit a form natively in the browser. When you submit a form, that data is sent as multi-part form as form data. Multi-part is just when it includes files, I think, but it's sent as form data. Okay, and for this stream, I'm actually going to use a form. So I'm actually going to do it like this with form data. And you'll see, because it's going to be way more simple than what many people do. We don't need to over-engineer to actually create a valid application that works. So we're just going to use a form like that. And this input, you can see how it's just form data, but we don't know exactly what's going on. We have to extract the data from it. So let me just do, we're going to get the title and if it's completed or not. So let me get the title like this, and I'll say input. Actually, let's not call this input. Let's call this data. Data, and we're going to get from it the title. Okay, and I'll get to this and why is it called title like this in a second. And also, we're going to say completed. So data get completed. Okay, so let's check what's happening here. We're getting either string or null. Okay, but see how it can only be or string or null, because these values are always going to be a string, which means that, for example, if we have a chat box and it's sending completed as true, it's going to actually come as a string, I believe. We're going to console like that, but I'm pretty sure that it comes as a string. And in this case, we're just going to say, if it comes, it's going to be completed, and if it doesn't come, it's not going to be completed. Or we can say, let's say true, like this. Okay. And if there's no title, okay, and in this case, for today, I'm just going to throw a regular error like this, missing title. And what's this going to do is it's going to just fail the endpoint, okay? But in the next stream, we're going to actually return a proper error response. So the user can, or the developer who's managing this, can process that response properly and see, okay, something was missing, okay? But in today, let's just throw an error to make sure that the title is there. That's it. Completed. And now we have to generate an ID, okay? And let's just use UUID. So I'm going to use a package called UUID. Split that for a second. PNPM UUID. Oh, not PNPM add UUID, like that. Which is a package that generates universal unique IDs, which are IDs that are guaranteed to be unique. We're just going to say this from here. We're going to import v4 as UUID v4 from the package UUID. And one thing that it's going to be missing, it's probably the type definitions, because I don't know why, but it doesn't come with types. So we'll install it. Let's say add development types UUID. So now we will have proper type definitions. Yep, like that. Cool. Okay, so let's generate an ID, and I'll say, okay, UUID, like that. And this ID, it's gonna look like something like this. Blah, 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 blah. I don't know exactly the length of it. I think it was 20-ish characters, but it's gonna be something like this. And this ID will be the one that identifies the new to-do that is being created. So now we have these three things. We have the title, we have it if it's completed, and we also have an ID that we just generated, like that. Okay, so the last thing is to actually store this, to create a record. So let's do it. Let's say c.env.stream-todos put, and this put essentially just takes a key and a value, right? And the put is going to be the user ID. Oh, actually, we need to get the user ID from the parameters, like that. Remember that it's tied to the actual route. So it's going to be user ID underscore the ID. Let's call this to-do ID, just for the sake of making this more readable. And we're going to just JSON stringify the title and complete it. Yeah, so title is if title is missing. If there is no title, we're throwing the error. Let's actually create the to-do in here and say ID, title, complete it, and let's store the to-do. Didn't we have the ID? Did I just to-do ID? Okay, let me call it again ID. And let's return this. Let's store it like this. So essentially, I created an object for the to-do with an ID. It's always good to also have the ID in the object, so it's better for data manipulation. Title, and if it's completed or not, like that. So now we're storing it. We're gonna wait for it, like this. And I believe that it doesn't return anything. I think that when you're doing that, the response from it, it's nothing. So the Cloudflare, it's not returning anything. It just, if it fails, it's gonna throw an error. But if it succeeds, then nothing's happening. And then we're gonna return the new to-do. Okay, so let's go through everything that is happening. We have this route with to-dos and the user ID as the parameter. And this user ID, it's used for, well, actually, we're getting the data from it. We're getting the title and completed from the form data that we're receiving. And then we're creating a new ID, and we're taking this to-do data and we're putting it in the stream to-dos KB store with an identifier of user ID underscore ID, like that. And this JSON stringify, it's taking this to-do and it's converting it to just a single string, so we can use it. Cool. Now that this is done, I actually want to deploy this and show you how submitting the form works. Okay, so we have already this. Let's actually, I'm not going to deploy it. Let's just do a quick implementation. Let's go to Webflow. Let me get rid of this. Let me get rid of this. We just create a container, there's the small one, and let's add a form in here, like that. And we're gonna have title, and we're gonna have, no label needed for this. We're gonna have a checkbox. I don't want to delete the site. I want to add a checkbox. We're gonna have a checkbox of completed, like this. Okay, so this form data, let me add heading section, like that. Okay, so this form data, it's the one that we want to send to the endpoint when we create a new to-do. We want to have the title, and we want to store it as completed or not completed. That's it. That's all the data that we need. Okay, we have to use the proper name for the fields. Let me show you. The form name, we don't care much, but we'll say just to-dos, form, whatever. Okay, but what we care, it's about the field names, the text names. This is going to be title, and the checkbox, it's going to be completed, like this. And see how this and this, it's matching the expected form data from here, that it's title and completed. The reason why we're matching these names is because when we submit a form and we send the data as form data, the data is sent with a key value structure. The key, it's the input name. So if I call this, instead of title, I call this name. This data, it's going to come from here, not as title. It's going to come as a name. Okay, so that the name of the input is what defines this. Actually, let's say, I don't know. Yeah, I think that was clear. So this is why it's always very important to properly name your inputs, because when you're submitting the form, the name of your inputs defines how you're sending the data, the keys of the data. Okay, very important. And the last thing is the action. See how in the form settings we have action and we also have a method. This method, do you know what's that method about? It's the HTTP request method. Remember that we talked about this. So this is how we're communicating with the server when we submit the form. So it's either a GET request or it's a POST request. And if you recall, this is a POST request. So the form has to be POST. And the action, it's the endpoint where we're sending the data. The action, it's going to be there. In this case, now I'm still in localhost, so it's going to be this. But the moment that we deploy this, we should replace the localhost for the actual production URL. And this ID, the 1234 ID, should also be replaced by the user's ID. And this is what would be done with some JavaScript on the front end. But for now, let's just keep it like that. Localhost /todos/ user ID is going to make a POST request that will contain a title and if it's completed or not. The title is going to be required. Let's make sure that the title is always there. And completed, it's not going to be required. We don't care about that one. Okay? So let me publish this. Like that. And let's actually console log this. Let's console log the to-do. If we reach it, we'll see it. Okay? So 1 second. We have this title, blah, 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 and completed. Let's make it true. Okay? Submit. And we made a post. Look what happened. We actually sent the post request to the server, which created the record and returned some JSON with the ID, with the node to do. Okay. The reason why we actually saw that we visited the next page is because we need some JavaScript to prevent this, and that JavaScript needs to live on the front end. But for now, let's just keep focusing on this. We created a node to do. Let's do another one, but instead of doing it in localhost, let's do it in production so we can see how the KB is created. So let me do pm deploy, pm run deploy, sorry. And this is going to deploy the worker to Cloudflare, see how fast it is. That's it. Our worker is in production. Super cool. And let's remember that the URL is stream/cloudflareworkers.finsweet.workers.dev, and it's going to be /todos/1234 in this case. Okay, zoom out a little bit. So let's take this URL instead, and let's put it here in the actions. So let's do it again, but now let's see the KB store, because the KB store just works in production. So let's do it again. No to do. And let's submit this. It worked fine. Okay. We have an ID like that. And let me refresh this. And we will see how we have that new to do. The UI in here sometimes breaks. I don't know why. But see how, yay. Oh, actually we created that one too. So we have this, and let's inspect this. Let's see how it contains the user ID, which is 1234 _ and then the unique ID for the to-do, And we also have the stringified data of the to-do. Great. So now if we refresh this, hey, we have it here. We have both to-dos. We have this to-do and this to-do. And see how it didn't take any JavaScript at all in here. But remember that all I did was just submit the data in a form, okay? Obviously, if we want to improve the user experience, we don't want to do that. We want to actually, prevent the page from going away and instead staying on the page, loading the new data, perhaps updating the UI, etc. But the actual action of sending the data, it was as simple as just slapping a form on the page, sending it to the endpoint, and because the endpoint is already expecting form data, that already worked. It was super simple. So yeah, let's just do one last one. Let's make it as completed. Let's submit. Yay, it worked. Let's check this. Oops, not localhost, sorry. Let's check this. Production. Yay, it works. And let's not forget what's happening here. Let me get rid of the other ones, the ones that are mocks. These ones. Let's not forget that everything is happening in the edge. So see how stuff it's so fast. Actually, it's a little bit cached, and I think that we can get deep into this in the future. But everything is so fast because it's on the edge. So it's these workers running somewhere next to me. So when I'm sending the data, when I'm getting the data, everything happens in less than 100 milliseconds. It's super fast. It's amazing. But it's showing false for completed. Let's go back to localhost. Actually, let me console log. How is the data coming as data that get completed? Because I might actually told you a lie when I said that it just comes as a string. Okay, so let me replace this again for the local host. I don't think it's a Webflow thing. I think it's a form. It's a form thing, and I think it makes sense to clarify this before leaving. Okay, let's do it again. Okay, console logging this. Oh, it's coming as on. I was already suspecting that, but I wanted to confirm. Yeah, it's coming as on. So when completed, it's true. It's actually coming not as true, but as on, like this. So now, let's do it again. Yay, completed true, like that. Okay, cool. We're done for today. That's it. On the next stream, we're probably gonna do a bunch of more streams because I see people excited about this. On the next stream, we're gonna take these API endpoints that we created, and we're gonna do two things. We're gonna add data validation, and we're gonna add proper error handling. When something goes wrong in the server, we have to properly handle it and return a response that reflects that to the user. Okay. And if we have enough time, then we'll continue implementing some more endpoints and maybe some UI bits. So if you like this, please leave a like, leave a comment, anything, or please share that in your social media because it really helps us a lot. And see you in the next stream. So see you next Friday. Thank you.